Welcome to Newswav's Top 5 News. I'm your host, Belachan, and I'm sure many of you might be wondering, where's Auntie Belle? Don't worry, she'll be back very soon, and I'll be your host for this week to make sure that you still stay informed. And boy, do we have an interesting selection for you this week. So sit back, relax, and let's get right into it. Let's start off this week's show with a story about interstate traveling. And I know your ears are all perked up just from hearing those words. Because if you could travel interstate, you'd probably be making plans for vacations, right? But hold your horses now. Only areas under RMCO beginning 10th March will be allowed to travel interstate. Currently, there are only 7 states under RMCO, those being Malacca, Pahang Terengganu, Sabah, Perlis, Labuan, and Putrajaya. However, there's an asterisk to it. Interstate travel will only be allowed in these areas for domestic tourism purposes. So what does this really mean? This means that you can only travel from one RMCO area to another using transport provided by a tour agency. Traveling via a private vehicle is not allowed. So, let me give you an example. Residents living in Malacca can travel to Pahang with no issues via a tour agency vehicle, but they're not allowed to make any stops in areas like Kuala Lumpur or any other CMCO areas. For those of us in areas under CMCO, don't worry. Health Minister Dr. Adam Baba has recently mentioned that interstate travel may still happen once CMCO ends on March 18, but it will largely depend on whether the cases are low enough by then. Now, let's hop into politics for a minute. Last weekend, there were reports of 2 former DAP assemblymen in Perak joining Parti Pribumi Bersatu. The 2 reps are Trono Assemblyman Paul Yong Chu Kiong and Buntong Assemblyman A. Sivra Subramaniam. Both of them, who were part of the Pakatan Harapan regime, resigned from DAP last year in March. Bersatu later received their applications in December 2020 and since announced that they would be joining its party as associate members. To add onto the party jumping story, Wanita MCA has recently proposed that the government enact anti-party hopping laws before the next general election. This is in hopes of trying to stop the culture of political frogs, which, as evident by the previous story as well, seems to only be getting worse. Wanita MCA Chief Dato Heng Saiki said the country would not be stable without such a law, as a total of 60 elected representatives have already defected since GE14 2018. I'm sure many of us Malaysians would agree with a law such as this. Do let us know your thoughts in the comment sections down below. Now, for our next story, you may have seen this circulating around social media. It's a video of a motorcyclist and a taxi driver fighting each other with a steering lock at a traffic light in Damansara. So, how did this all start? The fight was allegedly triggered when the 71-year-old taxi driver cut the 41-year-old motorcyclist off without signalling. The motorcyclist then confronted the taxi driver when they came to a stop at the traffic light. The motorcyclist, unsatisfied with how reckless the driver was, decided to come knocking on the latter's window. The driver then stepped out of his vehicle with a steering lock in hand. Angry for being told off, the taxi driver stepped out of the vehicle with the steering lock with the intent to hit the motorcyclist. Fortunately, or rather unfortunately, the motorcyclist managed to pry the steering lock away from the driver and used it to hit him back. Talk about getting a taste of your own medicine. Yikes. Fortunately for sure this time, another motorcyclist stepped in to stop the fight, moving them to the sidewalk instead, where they continued with their words instead of their fists. They then proceeded to get in their vehicles and leave the scene not long after. Police are still reportedly investigating the case. Alright, you may want to buckle up because the next story may get you a little heated. It has a little something to do with rice. If there's one thing about Malaysians I know for sure, is that we love our rice. And I think it's safe to say that we Asians know best about rice. So, can you imagine the uproar on social media when an individual who claims to be Britain's etiquette expert claims that rice should only ever be eaten with a fork and knife or with chopsticks and to never use our hands?
This ain't it, Chief!
Now, although we Malaysians have our very own unique way of consuming rice, be it with our hands, chopsticks, or even with just a spoon, we would never shame others for the way they decide to eat rice. Many netizens justifiably decided to hit back at Grant Harold, who is said to be the former butler to the royal family. Many believe that a British man should have no authority over the subject, although I do find it quite amusing that he suggests that we eat with these. Not the smartest way to go about things. So, do you think he actually brings up a good point, or is he just trying to rile us all up? It would be nice to know what you think down below. Our last story for this episode has something to do with the Ministry of Health. On the 4th of March, the Chief Secretary from the Ministry of Health issued a warning to all of its frontliners and civil servants against making public statements about the national healthcare system without permission from either the ministry or the government. The Ministry of Health decided to release a statement to address the recent issue of a healthcare worker speaking out about the distribution process of the vaccines under the National Immunization Program. Now, to summarize their statement, the Ministry of Health states it is prohibiting civil servants from making statements regarding either its programs or government decisions without permission, in order to avoid causing public panic and ruining its credibility. Many netizens have taken to the comment section of the post in order to voice their dissatisfaction with the decision. Many of these comments include calls to the Ministry of Health in order to investigate these complaints and concerns raised by the healthcare workers rather than just silencing them. So, those are the top 5 news we have for you this week. Let us know your thoughts on any of the stories. We'd love to hear them and have meaningful conversations. Thanks for joining us this week, and we hope to see you again very soon. Stay safe, and we hope you have a great day ahead of you. Bye.